Welcome back to this overview series where we look at the different aspects of the system, but we look at them in isolation by means of overview. We've done a few others and we've done a broader overview section as well. So what we're going to look at now is the My Courses section of the system. My Courses is where the majority of your staff who are involved in any form of training, teaching, or facilitation are going to spend their time. It's the area where you engage with the learner and share different resources with them. So what will look at is what the capabilities are and how to navigate it, just so that you're aware. We have got other courses available as well, which you can request to be linked to, where we actually go in depth into everything you're able to do in there. So if we look at My Courses, you'll see that you have the stuff that is linked to qualifications or the ones that are linked to short courses. So just as an example, I'm going to work on this one that's linked to qualifications. And what we're going to do is we are going to search for the module or the course we want to look at. So I want to look at adding a qualification. So I search for it and I select view. Things to take note of on this page are that you can choose the year context in which you want to work. As mentioned earlier, you see that there's a heads up page that sort of tries to give you an overview of what this is all about. We then have a resources section where you can share with other staff that have access to this module. You can share resources with them, create different folders and link files, add other links for them. The main part you're going to work with is the campuses. So you can have a number of campuses listed here to the right, and your staff will then select it, the campus, and then whichever group you've given them access to, they can also access. So let's look at this group because I've added a staff member already. I'll get to that now, but just so that you're aware of what's within this group control. The first thing is under options, you're able to send an email. So if you have communications access to send emails in the system, you can click send an email and it'll ask you which mailbox do you want to send it from, and then you can automatically send to all of the learners in that particular group. The next thing you're able to do is you can pull out a class list, look at student performance based on assessment results. You can also then look at the attendance of the given learner, and then if you need to, you can look at the contact information for your learners in your particular group. The reasoning behind a group is all these learners are going to be doing the same assessments and be exposed to the same information at the same time. If there's any changes, for example, the students that are carrying a year mark or they have a different configuration of their learning, then you'd split into multiple groups. But if all the students are doing the same stuff at the same time, you can put them all into one group. The next thing you'll see under the group is you can add a tag. I showed tags in the overview, but basically you could tag this group, create a tag, and then it will make it easier to search for this group in other parts of the system. It also tells you which programs this particular group is linked to, and then you have your staff access control. So the staff access control looks at which staff can access this particular group for teaching and learning purposes and what types of control they will have. So when you add somebody, you just search for them and then you can add them. But once they're added, you can then, based on what you'd like them to be able to do with the group, select the different options from. You can select from the different options here. The other thing you're able to do is you can set a permissions end date. What this is whatever your configuration is here in terms of your access rights, you can choose a date when it will expire. So if you wanted this to expire on the last day of June, for example, you can set that date, and then on the 1st of July, when that staff member logs in, they won't have any of those access rights anymore to the group. The group won't even appear for them. So the next thing is that you're able to link learning material. Learning material is what the institution sets as prescribed learning material for this particular course. So if there's a certain textbook or something that needs to be linked, you can do that. Yeah, a lot of stuff has changed in terms of online resources or other resources. So we have this area now as well where you can share other resources for this group. The next aspect we're going to look at besides the groups is that there's students. So for every group, you'd have a list of students. It will tell you when they joined and left. So if a group started on the 1st of January, but you finalized a particular student's registration into the group on the 31st of March, the dates will be that they'd be from the 31st of March till the end of the year, because they'd start later than everybody else in the group. So you'd have that there. You would also have their current grade and the attendance percentage. So the reason that we have this listing is we're able to do different things with these students. So if you select a student, you can select make changes, and you have the option to, for example, move a student to another group. In moving them to another group, when you move them to another group, you can allocate different resources to go with them. So if you want the assessment results, for example, to go with them when they go across, you can map those across to the new group as well. Editing the date that they joined and left the group is just an administration tool, because maybe you want to, when you move them to another group, you want to give them a different date range. There's a whole lot of different settings here that you can use for them. Now, the next thing that you're able to do is, in terms of knowing these are all the students in your group and you have those different functions to work with them, you can then add assessments for your group. So if you add an assessment, for example, we'll call this test 1, we'll make it out of 40, and it's going to be count only 10% towards the final grade. We have that. The next thing that we're able to do is, if this was an online assessment, we can say that when they start the assessment, they only have 50 minutes to complete it. So that's what that is for whenever you're sitting an online assessment. You can then choose when the assessment is held. It can either be on a single day, or it can be over a particular period. And if you want it to be an assessment where learners can upload things against that particular assessment, you can select that. Adding to another group, we don't advise if you are doing an online assessment. The reason for this is that with online assessments, you create a question paper, but the question paper is linked to that particular attempt. We'd rather you create the assessment, and you can then come in afterwards and use this tool in one of the other groups if you needed to copy this across to another group. And you see, to copy assessments from other groups belonging to this module, click here. You click on that, and you can then see the different assessments that are available, and you can copy those attempts across. So that was dealing with assessments. There's a whole thing that we have in our online training course that will help staff to know how to set this all up and be able to manage the students and deal with online assessments, reopening submissions or adjusting submissions for individual students. You're able to manage that separately. The next thing that is available for you is dealing with attendance. Now, please be aware that you need an event to capture attendance. We advise that you in general, because lots of people may be using the system, you work off the calendar option. And the reason for this is that main calendar, when you're managing the events, allows you to see if there's any clashes or conflicts with what you want to set up. If you do it from here, you can add events here, but what will happen is your system is isolated. So it's only going to check in the it won't even check for conflicts. It's only going to be in the context of this group, and you can keep creating events. Whereas if you use the main calendar, there's a check against it to say that you can't, you shouldn't create this group because there's a clash either with the staff member or with the student. So attendance is linked to calendar events being created, and then you can capture attendance for the learners. And if that information is captured, it will update this attendance percentage. The next part is e-learning. I'm just going to get rid of this so that you can see you get a blank one. And what you're able to do is basically your e-learning follows a set learning path. So the same way in which you teach the learner in your on-site face-to-face learning environment, you can set up the same here. So if you wanted to set up how you teach, so let's say you had 2 days in which you'd have contact sessions with them, and then you'd cover a certain amount of learning material. You can say this is day 1, and we're covering sessions 1 to 3. I'm just going to tick this that they can't do this assessment till they finish. Yeah. So what this enables you to do is you can then have now different sessions. So let's say we wanted to have session 1. Session 2. And session 3. So what this does is it means that the same way in which you teach in your formal learning environment, you can present the supportive or supplementary learning materials in the same way. So it's laid out that they know, oh, on the first day of lectures, we covered this information. Yes, these things, or for training, we covered these. So you can add that, yeah. So for session 1, for example, we can add different links. We can add content and instructions. We can link files. We can add images. So it allows us to fill out this content, and you now know that if the learner has attended your session and comes and looks at this particular session, they're going to have the supplementary information that they can work through. The other thing you're able to do is you can add different files and links, so to other to link out to web pages and that, or there can be files for them to download. You can also link YouTube or Vimeo videos, so the videos will play back in this on this page. We go in depth in that training course. This is just an overview so you know what's available. The other thing that can happen now is because you've created this page that is related to this body of content, learners can ask questions in the context of that particular material. So instead of just having this wide open chat space, a learner can go in and say, okay, I'm looking at the information or the resources for session 1 or a certain topic and or concept. You know what, I don't understand this stuff. And so they post a comment or question in the context of this particular resource that they don't understand. And then you can answer the question in that context as well. It helps keeping the discussion focused. Obviously, they need a method of being able to access it. So you'll see that you have visibility. So you can choose the period that you want it open for, or you can just have it open from now till forever. So it will always be open as long as somebody has access to this course. The second to last aspect is you can structure it like I did when I added this and I said finish the chapter or lesson before taking the assessment, that they have to go through each of these pages, and then you can link, if you've made an online assessment, they can access the assessment. How can you verify this? So what the system does is it keeps a record to see whether the learner has accessed those different pages and the number of times they've viewed it as well. And based on that, it will allow them access to the assessment. So if you wanted to control that you're putting up these different supportive materials, you want to make sure that they've accessed the materials before they access your assessment, you can set that up as well. Obviously, everything is designed in the system, like I mentioned, for assessments, that once created, you can then copy it. So yeah, I can copy this to another group. So once you've set up your e-learning for one of the groups, if the other groups have similar e-learning or the same, you can copy it across for them to have access as well. So that's e-learning. The last one is Outline. Outline works with the thing that we went through in the overview, which is the course builder. So if you've built a course in the system and you have all of the various outcomes and how stuff is going to be measured for the learner, and you've set up all of your assessment dates, you can ask us to make changes to it if you require it, any tweaking. But basically, it's going to make a course guide for you. So under Outline, you'll be able to click on the course guide, which will automatically be generated for you, and you can then share that link with your learners, and then from that link they're able to access your course guide without you needing to create anything. It just goes based on everything else that you filled out in the system. So that's an overview of what's available for you in My Courses. There is a course that we have available which allows your staff to have an in-depth view of My Courses, and that is the course that is managing the module or course, and staff will get all this information on how to actually work in their particular course and monitor and share stuff with their learners, as well as tracking their progress through the learning. I hope you found this overview useful, and in exploring, I hope that you would want to learn more, access our other training courses, and get a better understanding of the system.